Welcome to Infested Coastline once again, and spawning as the blue black hand on the left side. It is the one, the only, Technique. On the right side, we do have as the green GDI, Green Zero. And that is right, Green Zero is going to be in this best of 3 versus Technique. Now, this best of 3 will decide who plays Bike Rush Owns. Bike Rush Owns able to defeat the master of Kane's Wrath, Master Leaf himself. And it does seem that the king of modern wrath, Bike Rush Owns, is back in the throne after being taken down by Master Leaf. But whoever wins here is not over yet. Now, of course, Bike Rush Owns is kind of the one that everyone expects to be in the final. Who is he going to be up against? Well, it's of course hard to say, but it looks like this Rifleman squad is going to be grabbing that building. And is it going to be an Operations Center next out of Technique? He could very well be going for an Operations Center. I guess he could be going for a Secret Shrine, but he's probably going for another refinery, although he may very well be going for a second War Factory, and then an MCV cell. He, of course, does do this as well. Oh, goodness. I don't know how to block people in-game, but I think I might have to figure that out. At any rate, shout out to Warstorm for the huge water glass. I don't know why he likes that so much, but it's just the glass that I drink water out of. At any rate, Green Zero dropping down his second refinery, and this harvester, it looks a little bit bugged, but as long as it's still refining Tiberium, that's all that you really care about. Now, Green Zero, his angle of approach will be leading him, of course, to this field over here, and then that will give him a fair amount of Tiberium. You can go for the closer expand, which also puts you very close to your opponents, and we've seen this kind of work out in different ways a couple of different times in tournament games. And the MCV for Technique, there it is. Okay, I lost it there for a second there. He went north. So as you can see, he's going for the close expansion, but there's not a whole lot of Tiberium, and it also puts him in quite close quarters with Green Zero. Now, Green Zero, of course, with Juggernauts, Sonic Emitters, and that sort of thing, and maybe even if he goes Railguns, Preds, or Mammoths, he could very well have a very, very strong base-pushing force. But will he be able to knock down Technique? Technique opening up with, it looks like it is going to be like 6 harvesters. Oh no, this is only just number 5 that he sent up to the north there. So transferring that 5th harvester a little bit earlier. Some players wait until they have 5 harvesters down here, and then the 6th harvester they transfer up to their expansion field. As you can see, that's probably actually what Green Zero is doing. Now, Green Zero, he's a sneaky fellow. A lot of people think of him as a straight-up player, but he'll play Blackhand, and he'll Flame Rush the crap out of you. He will Orca Rush you. Actually, I don't know if I've seen him Orca Rush, but he will definitely rush you if he feels like he can get away with it. And on top of that, he is very sneaky with the APC Engineers. I've seen him do quite a bit with APC Engineer and really run quite a few throughout the map to try to sneak things in on people. So he's a sneaky player, and I think he likes playing a variety of styles to mix things up and to make sure that they don't get too standard, so that he's not like, I'm always going to go 15 harvesters mass upgrades and then start building my army. He's like, no, I'm going to mix it up. You never really know what I'm going to be throwing at you. And similarly, Technique, he will rush you to death as well, or he will play a standard straight-up game and macro like a king. And of course, that macro has won him many, many games, but also his bike buggy all-ins have indeed won him games in the past, although personally, I haven't seen Technique bike buggy all-in in a long, long time, if ever. I think I've seen it, but I don't think I've ever casted it. At any rate, Predator tanks are going to be the choice for Green Zero. Of course, you can go Pit Bulls to try to deal with this, but Green Zero has to be very careful. He may very well be queuing up some watchtowers to go ahead and drop, but there is going to be the command post. He starts AP ammo pretty much immediately, and that's very important in dealing with a lot of these lighter tier 1 attacks. And I mean, 2 bikes, is it 2 bikes or was it 3 bikes? No, it's 2 bikes and a buggy. Is that a deathly rush, deathly like harass force? No, not at all. But if you do not have anything to deal with it, you're going to be forced to pull harvesters off the line. You're going to be taking a lot of damage, and Green Zero puts his harvester back to work, so good on him. but you have to make sure that you don't let just those small amount of units deal with your economy really too effectively, and that's of course where command posts and AP ammo comes into play. Now, is it going to be Orcas or is it going to be Hammerheads for Green Zero? I guess if he was up to tier 3, it could be Firehawks, but those are a little bit more expensive to get out. It's going to be dual airfield Hammerhead, at least for now. He may also be going for a couple of Rifleman squads, selling off buildings and that sort of thing to go ahead and get some stuff out on the field. Oh, these Predator tanks definitely need to pull back. Green Zero trying to split the difference and take less damage, but it's not quite working out. As you can see, the huge amount of rocket troopers are just going to be leading their way all the way to the front lines. And Green Zero, he's going for, it looks like, oh, is he actually going engineers inside of the Hammerheads? That could be very, very interesting. He is pretty much mined out on his main base, which means harvesters need to transfer over, and he needs to sell off some of those refineries back at his expansion, or at his main base. He is going to get APC Engineer, which isn't something he always does, but it is definitely a possibility. I mean, anytime you play against GDI, it is something you have to keep in mind. And let's see, Technique may not actually have a whole lot on the south side here. He does have a couple of distracting Predator tanks, so Green Zero, is he going to be able to deal with the Hammerheads? They are starting to work away at these Scorpion tanks, and these Scorpion tanks, they don't have dozer blades. These transferring harvs may end up getting caught a little bit out of position here. These Predator tanks trying to run away from those infantry, and these Scorpion tanks getting focused down one after the other. The waypoints really working out for Green Zero quite well, going to be focusing down the Scorpion tanks one after another, and that is where that AP ammo is just absolutely fantastic for dealing with those non-anti-air units. Of course, Scorpion tanks are very bad at shooting in that sort of upward direction, which is the exact direction the Hammerheads always are in, which was a very weird way to put that, but look, I just mean versus stuff that doesn't shoot up, Hammerheads are great, alright? Where's that APC? Looking on the mini-map, can't quite locate it. However, more and more Rifleman squads are going down. Oh, Hammerhead's taken quite a bit of damage here. Fortunately for Green Zero, there is no TIB core on this, or there's no TIB core purchased for him. Mantises are starting to come out, and that's a Rifleman squad that's just getting absolutely trashed. Green Zero starting to expand over to his third. He could try to take the kind of natural expansion of a Technique and then try to hold the line with some later game units. Of course, sonic emitters will be very good for that. More Predator tanks rolling over here on the left side, kind of south-left, southwest part of the map. And these APCs, one of them may have an engineer inside of it. I'm not sure which one it is. Clearly not that one. Did that APC actually go down? I don't think it did, but maybe it did. Green Zero going to be re-expanding, and the infantry for Black Hand player Technique have indeed swung up north. And that Rifleman squad finally does get cleaned up. The Predator tanks rolling into the back of the base for Technique. If they stop to attack the refinery, that'll be denying any sort of build radius and future harvesting. But really, that refinery right now is not a very important target. Firing some extra shots at it in passing is great and everything, but focusing on these power plants, focusing on that operations center is a much better idea. If he could take out the tech lab as well, that would be fantastic, but I don't know that he'll be able to get that. The secret shrine has been built, and there is going to be the one clicks coming down on top of Green Zero. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to take down a lot of these harvesters. Oh, that could be very massive. If Technique is able to take down a bunch of the harvesters for Green Zero, that would be pretty massive. APC is going to be rolling up on the front lines here. There's a lot of infantry, and the Hammerheads are going to be helping out with dealing with the infantry. And the Mantises, though, they're chasing away a lot of those Hammerheads. Again, there's none of that TIB core missile upgrade just yet. But, of course, it could end up getting purchased. Now, right here, right now, we're seeing the power of the Black Hand man spam, holding off Technique, or holding off Green Zero on multiple different fronts with those extremely cheap infantry. And, of course, Technique keeping a large ground army is, of course, going to be one of his strengths. He is able to macro up so well. And Green Zero is going for a very nice counter, though, of course, bringing in the Shatterers, and, of course, if he ends up going for sniper teams as well, which I don't think he has an armory just yet. He's establishing his economy in the south here, kind of the southeast location of this map. If he goes for sniper teams, he can start laying off rounds into this army, and oh, goodbye airfield, goodbye refinery. These Spectres could potentially clean up a couple of more buildings and units, as that APC just gets absolutely trashed right pretty much in the middle of those two buildings for maximum damage. And unfortunately for Green Zero, actually I don't know if it's splashing the War Factory. It looks like it is, but I'm not sure. And that War Factory just getting smashed. Green Zero. Ooh, he went Predator tanks, and as it turns out, Green Zero is bad at doing Predator tanks versus infantry. And it's not Green Zero's fault, it's the fact that Technique knows how to use Black Hand infantry. And of course, Technique just eating up more and more of these Predator tanks. And Technique really does need to get some eco rolling, but Green Zero just needs to stop the Black Hand man spam. And this is one way to do it. I mean, Hammerheads are going to be a good choice, of course. If he ends up getting an armory, he could indeed go for some sniper teams, but for now he's going pretty much just mass rifleman squad, which unfortunately are running right through Tiberium and taking a bit of damage from the get-go. So that's bad for Green Zero, although Green Zero picking off a couple of rocket squads here is going to be nice, but he loses a Hammerhead if he loses a second. Oh, I mean, it's not worth it when you lose one Hammerhead for those kind of numbers, but if you lose a second Hammerhead, it's worth it even less. Watchtowers are being established, but with the amount of infantry that Technique has, it's going to be pretty easy to overwhelm that. He's now got a refinery down on this expansion. Going for a second refinery would be a good idea, and he could even be going for supercharged particle beam, or rather just charged particle beam, if he's still at his tech center, which he doesn't actually have at this point. Now, Hammerhead's rolling up to this fight, of course, assisting those rifleman squads, but unfortunately for Green Zero, the rifleman squads just are not enough to hold off this sheer number of Black Hand infantry. And the SAM turret right on the front line, as we will be watching a lot of these Hammerheads just disintegrate. The clumping up is going to be happening a little bit here. It's not super bad, but once another volley of these rockets go off, it could be spelling the end of the game for these Hammerheads. The Predator tanks are definitely getting cleaned up, and now it is Technique's time to go ahead and come in with his infantry and clean up the main base of Green Zero. Green Zero did this with, Predator tanks in the earlier part of this game. Loses a couple more of those Hammerheads. And I mean, there's the sell-off for Green Zero. He does still have the Marv. It's almost out. He did have to sell off a couple of buildings there. They weren't super important, but of course they are quite annoying to lose. There's going to be the Marv popping right out for Green Zero. Now, of course, if he was Zocom, he could potentially go for a lot of Zone Raiders and then end up getting out something inside of this inside of this Marv to just deal mass splash damage to these infantry. Nice split on these Hammerheads for Green Zero, not taking very much damage on any of them clumped up and really taking splash damage from those rockets, but at the same time, they clean up everything. There was a heroic rocket squad in that army, so Technique not really focus firing very well. He maybe could have cleaned up one or two more Hammerheads, and does he have... He doesn't have a SAM turret queued, so he is going to have to be careful about where these Hammerheads actually come in. He might just have to go for that Tib spike and then kind of cut his losses right there. There's a couple of APCs. They don't have anything inside of them, so it's not going to be a sneaky sort of comeback for Green Zero, but the Hammerheads are heading around the back of the base. He could go for some of these upgraded power plants, could go for the SAM turret, but does he have enough to really deal with this Black Hand army? Railguns are a good choice. Engineers on top of that, going to be a very solid option for Green Zero. And I don't know, does he... Okay, so he still doesn't have any engineers inside of those APCs. He's just throwing the engineers inside of that Marv. Still no sniper teams, which sniper teams are an option to deal with the Black Hand infantry, but of course the super tank of the Marv does do some nice splash damage with the main shell. I'm not actually sure how much splash damage the main shell does, but I believe it does a little bit of splash damage to infantry. And of course, if you do not force move your infantry, they can start taking damage, get into that suppressed fire state, and then just take huge amounts of damage. Also, Juggernauts are another option, but again, Juggernauts, they really only shine when the splash damage happens. This Marv taking a lot of damage right from the get-go, and Green Zero is moving in here with a lot of Hammerheads. He's going to be able to do a fair amount of damage, but the SAM turrets are there to just focus down the Hammerheads and not a whole lot else. These Harvesters are getting eliminated, and Green Zero, as long as he's Marvisting this field, he of course does have a stake in this game. He's redeploying his MCV kind of on the north side there in the middle of the map, back at his main base, and it looks like this bridge did end up getting cleaned up there, but this Marv is taking a lot of damage from the mass rocket troopers, and Green Zero is going to be losing his Marv. Goodbye, Marv. Hello, Hammerheads, as they're just taking a ton of damage, but they are going to be clearing a number of these heroic rocket squads mixed in are going to be able to clean up the Hammerheads, and unfortunately for Green Zero, he banked quite a bit on that attack. He's even getting shut down in the north here, and unfortunately for Green Zero, since he sent in these APCs one at a time, they were even less effective than they otherwise could have been. Marv could be being rebuilt. Green Zero trying to get his economy back up and running. As you can see, this field has been able to regrow quite a bit and has been able to really get some use out of it. Once again, Green Zero could potentially transfer like maybe one more harvester up there. We'll be selling off that refinery, and I guess he could have sold off the other one. I think that one was a little bit low on HP, so that means, of course, you can get some more cash back if you sell off the healthy one. But for Green Zero's sake, he is going to be getting his economy back online. Technique has been just playing really solid, even though he's just been going for this kind of man-spammy style. Throws down another war factory, trying to get some more harvesters on this field. Could go ahead and re-expand to his main as well, and then sit on that 3-base economy and just constantly sort of force down Green Zero's units. Looks like Green Zero is going to be going for another Marv. Of course, it worked out so well for him last time. I mean, really, the Marv's utility is in that he can just Marvest away a lot of the field of his opponent and just eat up that field until basically there's not a whole lot left. And Marvesting, for those of you who don't know, it's actually less efficient than just harvesting regularly. But when you're Marvesting from an enemy-controlled field, you don't care about harvesting efficiently. You care about getting as much Tiberium away from your opponent as possible. Now, Rifleman squads starting to kind of get built back up are, of course, a good choice. But again, we've never seen the armory, which means we've never seen that composite armor upgrade. We've never seen those sort of upgrades for our Rifleman squads from Green Zero. Of course, he does have AP ammo, and he is going to be throwing a couple of these zone troopers into this Marv just for that extra damage. But he's looking to go ahead and harvest away at this third field. And this is a little bit safer than dealing with the third field that Technique is on. And Technique, he actually just could move his MCV back a little bit here. He might be starting to tech up once again as he does sell off one of the Hand of Nods. And I'm assuming he does know that this Marv is up here. He might not have seen it. I'm not quite sure what his vision range is, but I mean, he'll know it's up there sooner or later. As Green Zero going for the scout off with that Rifleman squad. And he's going to be able to get eyes on this, but really Green Zero has bought himself a lot of time. And of course, with that Marv harvesting this entire third field, which Technique now knows about, he will, of course, be able to fuel a lot of unit production with that money. I'm not actually sure how much cash Green Zero is floating at the current moment, but considering the fact that he was able to harvest that field, what was left of his main base field, and then harvest the majority of this third field, that's a fair amount of money that Green Zero was able to ingest. The Pitbull, again, getting pretty much the full scout off for Green Zero, and of course the Cabal sell-off from Technique is going to be able to do a bit of damage to that Pitbull, eventually work away at it. Curious Hand of Nod placement here from Technique. That's really just... like, is he going to be able to do a whole lot with that Hand of Nod other than just produce a few of extra rocket troopers to deal with anything that comes in the back of the base? Probably not, just because it's such an awkward placement of that Hand of Nod. The Marv on the north side of the map. Green Zero going to be heading in here with a lot of Hammerheads, and of course these are AP ammo Hammerheads, and of course now this Hand of Nod is going to be a good idea, but Green Zero just has way too many Hammerheads. He's going to be able to focus down both of these harvesters pretty much for free. I don't think he's lost a single Hammerhead. He needs to clean up that SAM site, the SAM hub, before the turrets actually get rebuilt. And oh, actually, he goes into low power mode, so good on Green Zero. He will be able to clean up that SAM hub with his Marv. And he, of course, has to be very careful. He needs to kite away from a lot of these rocket squads. And Green Zero, he doesn't want to go down 0-1 to tech. He, of course, since this is a best of 3, he wants to stay up that first game. And then even if he goes down 2-0 from that point, he took a game off of Technique. And, of course, Technique, he wants to secure himself a nice spot. But Green Zero with the counterattacks, can it be enough? Technique, he doesn't have a whole lot of infrastructure left. He's trying desperately to rebuild power plants. There goes the Marv once again. That is an expensive toy for Green Zero to pretty much just be throwing away. And if Green Zero throws away too many of these Hammerheads, that economic boost that he got with the Marv and with that main base field is going to be pretty much evaporating. Unfortunately, I don't think Green Zero has thrown too many rifleman squads into these hammerheads, which would be a great use of just selling off watchtowers, even if he doesn't like build a barracks and produce specific rifleman squads. Just selling off watchtowers, any extra rifleman squads you have around the map, you know, hitting that Q button and then lining up all of your rifleman squad right around there could be very useful. Green Zero going to be coming in here. Technique is just with a huge army, finally moving into the main base, and, well, kind of the new main base of Green Zero. The watchtower goes down and gets trashed, but this is distracting from these hammerheads, and the Harvester is also coming off the line, absorbing quite a few shots there. The focus firing, of course, it's hard to really focus down the heroic units in these groups because it's just so many units, and can Green Zero actually do it? Holy cow! Green Zero cleans up that army. Technique has nothing left, and that is it. Whoa. Whoa. That was what Green Zero needed. Just check out that spike of units. Just all the way down, and then look at that Technique. I mean, you can't quite see it because it gets blocked by the victory emblem, but it looks like Technique was all the way down there at the bottom pretty much with his units. 0.24 versus almost a 4.0 unit kill to death ratio. 20 minutes of some interesting action. All right, welcome to Twisted Rift, game number 2 of this best of 3. The cyan black hand in the top left side. This is Technique. And as our green GDI in the bottom right side, it's the man who's up 1-0 in this best of 3. It's Green Zero. All right, Twisted Rift, a map that is, of course, very similar to Tournament Rift. It's got a bit of a longer run distance. I'm assuming the map is pretty much the same size, but, of course, the rush distance is just slightly longer, and there's only 2 spikes total on the map, one very easy to secure for each player. And, of course, Technique as Black Hand. We saw in the last game, he loves his man spam. Curious choice of, you know, some of the upgrades that he neglected, but also Green Zero playing very odd in that game. No Juggernauts, no Sonic Emitters, no Sniper teams. Despite all that, he was able to win with a lot of Hammerheads and pretty darn good control of those Hammerheads. Of course, if you let the Hammerheads stack up too much, then they just take so much splash damage that they get eliminated, and of course, those Hammerheads are expensive, even more so when you start loading infantry up into them, but Green Zero was able to sneak out a win. Just a little bit there. And there is going to be the Operations Center. Flame tanks are on the way for Technique, and this is something that can work very, very well on an open map like this. Now, where there is the anti-scout, it looked like there was probably a scouting squad that got cleaned up there, but this is the first flame tank, and does he send it south? Green Zero, he gets eyes on it, he sees it, and actually I'm not sure that Technique actually saw that Green Zero saw that. Okay, yeah, he definitely saw that. He's got crazy vision from those buildings. Forget how much buildings give vision. It's pretty crazy. Of course, the build radius from the MCV is pretty big on top of that, and the bike is going to be the follow-up. So Green Zero may be thinking that it's a lot of flame units, but actually it's just going to be the one Black Hand inside of that Reckoner, which is a little bit cheaper than trying to get out a secondary Black Hand squad. Technique, however, is going to be just kind of tricking Green Zero. He's going to be like, hey, yeah, look, there's the flame tag. You got the flame tag. You got the rush. Oh, just kidding. Here's a Reckoner. But of course, the Reckoner, once it deploys, it does, of course, gain a bit of an ammo boost, or a armor boost, not an ammo boost, as unfortunately for Green Zero, he cannot place anything much closer to that War Factory for him. And, I mean, just look at that range on that Black Hand squad. It's so, so close. There's the Engineer. A great save by Green Zero. Going to be able to shut down this Flame Rush, at least the Reckoner part of it. And there's the sell-off. There's the eject of that Black Hand squad. The Flame Tank did clean up the spike for Green Zero, which is going to be a nice advantage for Technique. And, of course, Technique, since he went for that Flame Rush, he's going to be moving his MCV nice and early because he's already got build radius up here, but he is not necessarily going to be really expanding very early. The expansion timing will be pretty much standard, maybe even a little bit later if he commits really hard to this aggression, but he does have his MCV already in that position, so once he's ready to expand down to the south, he doesn't have to worry about moving his MCV. He's already good to go. Now, a lot of bikes are here. It looks like 4 and 7 is going to be the count for Technique. This is not enough to, I think, one-shot a harvester, but it is enough to do a severe amount of damage. One harvester goes down to about half HP, and another volley should be enough to clean it up. That's a nice kill for Technique. He needs to get out of there, though. He traded one harvester for one bike, which is still very solid for Technique. And at the same time, he's still rocking this one refinery, two harvesters in the north. So that's going to be very good for Technique, and Green Zero sitting on just that one refinery. The second one did get torched down, and now there's the extra refinery for Technique. Going to be able to transfer a harvester or two, if he chooses, down to that southern field. But Green Zero going in for the scout. The Pitbull is going to be saying, okay, you still just got that one refinery. There's the second refinery for Green Zero. The MCV may be on the move relatively soon here. Nice snipe for each player. That's a little bit more expensive for Green Zero, but of course he doesn't need quite as many units to fend off those bikes of Technique. He can of course drop down a couple of watchtowers, which will absorb a lot of shots and also deal a fair amount of damage, but Green Zero does need to pack up his MCV and get on the move at some point. He has confirmed that this is the re-expansion of Technique. He did have that Rifleman squad, which did indeed see the one refinery. It did not see the second refinery, but Green Zero is going to be expanding towards his opponent, going for that aggressive expansion, and the bikes pick off a nice Predator tank kill there for Technique. They pick off that tank really quite easily, and again, killing off that Tib spike is going to just be clocking up more and more income for Technique the longer and longer that this game goes on. Another bike. Oh my gosh, did he not actually get a bike kill there? He did kill a bike, I think. But if he loses a Predator tank without taking out like two bikes, then of course it's just so worth it for Technique. Green Zero taking a little bit of damage there, but Technique doesn't, I don't think, have eyes on the expansion of Green Zero. He doesn't know the MCV move is actually towards him, but he will know relatively soon, once of course he starts moving out, and these bikes will probably actually scout it. And actually, Green Zero, if he doesn't have anything to defend this expansion, he's going to be in a bit of trouble. Now, he's going for lots of pit bulls, which is a solid choice against the amount of bikes that Technique has. But also going for AP ammo is going to be not quite essential, but pretty darn good. Going for a command post after this power plant would be a very good idea. Of course, he could go for it back here in kind of the farther away main base. It's not necessarily more defended, but it does put a bit more distance and a bit more travel time between you and your opponent. There is the third War Factory. One of these might end up getting sold off, but for now it is going to be triple War Factory off of kind of that two-base economy. It's not super saturated two-base economy because there's only one refinery up here, but this is a very solid two-base economy for Technique. And of course, Green Zero, once he throws down another refinery, transfers a couple more harvs, he will be on kind of 1.5 base economy, which is actually what Technique is on. But Green Zero can actually start selling off one of these refineries, transferring harvs, and he'll be all right. But triple War Factory bike buggy is very powerful, and it looks like the map is kind of going to be split like that most likely, although Technique might be able to take this expansion in the top right side if Green Zero doesn't end up taking it. We also could end up seeing a kind of like north-south split where Green Zero takes this base after he pushes Technique out, but for now, this is going to get pretty messy for both players. Green Zero has to make sure that he focus fires, and as you can see from the health bars, there's just a ton of units there. Green Zero trying to pull back some of his units, and of course, Technique wants to make sure that the buggies are tanking the damage if at all possible, which means sending them in first, keeping them closer to the target so that the AI retargets the buggies before it actually targets the bikes. And this harvester is pretty full of Tiberium. This could end up helping to make it worth it for Technique. He needs to get out of here now because there's just too many forces, too many base defenses for Green Zero to go ahead and hold off that attack. Now, a lot of the bikes do escape. I'm not actually sure what the count of bike versus buggy was, but as you can see, there's a lot more bikes than there is buggies, which is good for Technique, because even though the buggies don't have a lot of DPS, he just wants them absorbing that damage. The blue tib in the middle of the field could very well be harvested by Green Zero. The long-distance harvesting can be very much worth it. Where in the world did these harvesters come from? Oh, they must have been long-distance harvesting up there when Green Zero caught them and then told them to go ahead and head on down south because he just lost a bunch of harvesters. The splash damage isn't too crazy. I'm not sure how much of that was splash damage versus just focus firing from Technique, but for now, Green Zero is taking a fair amount of damage, but Technique, he's got a lot of forces. He just needs to make sure that he doesn't sacrifice too many of them. Oh, that harvester does go down so quickly, and Green Zero might be losing his second harvester. Unfortunately for him, these harvesters are just, they've got their rear armor facing the Technique units, which of course just allows Technique to do so much damage versus Green Zero. And there is going to be a Pitbull getting cleaned up really quite quickly. And I think the Pitbull may have actually got a kill, as we did have an emblem kind of fly up into the air there. Technique, does he have anything to really focus fire? No, it looks like most of the Harvesters are at all about the same amount of health. Oh, wow, this is just an absolute thrashing here. Green Zero just getting absolutely messed up. There's too many bikes. There's not a fast enough rate of fire for these units from Green Zero. He doesn't have the ability to just eliminate bikes fast enough, and Green Zero can't even deal with the sheer numbers of units that he's losing. On top of that, the splash damage for that Harvester, which just spawned, is so crazy. There's the GG. Wow, that last push in from Technique was just powerful enough to kill Green Zero, even though technically Green Zero had the units to deal with what Technique had. Technique had the numbers, and that's kind of what the end of that match came down to, was the agility of the units for Technique and the numbers. So in 9 minutes, Technique able to take down Green Zero and even the score up 1-1. Welcome to Tournament Decision, and spawning as the green GDI in the bottom left side, this is Green Zero. And in the top right side as the yellow black hand, it's Technique. And he drops down the second hand of Nod. Of course, Green Zero is just going to be going for that single barracks right in the middle. I say, of course, like, oh, Green Zero always does this, but really, it's just sort of a transition word, so don't try to read too much into that. Green Zero instead going for just that hand of Nod. Now, this does allow Green Zero to get out a slightly faster refinery, but it does mean that his engineers have a slightly long distance to walk each. Now, a lot of players do go for the placement of the hand of Nod or barracks, or portal if you like, over here and then down here, because that is the closest distance to these two Tib spikes that you can pretty much get. And as you can see, that's kind of playing out right here. While faster refinery can kind of mean faster eco, the differences between these players is going to be so small this early on that it doesn't even really matter. Now, it's of course going to be a technical difference, but one that shouldn't actually really be playing into this game. Green Zero going to be grabbing those Tib spikes. As you see, Technique did the same thing. And of course, both of these players most likely going to be macroing up like we like to see. As we like to see, there's going to be the Harvester, and the Refinery should be coming up. Green Zero going to be queuing something else up. Looks like it may be a Pitbull, and he does indeed cancel it right there. But the Refinery should be going down for both of these players. No! Flame Rush. I don't see anything really moving on the minimap, so I think this is going to be the first Flame Tank out for Technique. Now, Green Zero has done a very, very good job. Let's switch over to his vision real quick. Some people don't like this. Check out this vision. Tell me one place where a Flame Tank can go where Green Zero will not see it. He gets vision of it there. He gets vision of it there. There's the Black Hand Squad. He now knows that it's a Flame Tank rush, and it is indeed going to be, to some degree, going to be heading a different direction. He doesn't know exactly where it's going, but he does indeed know that it's going to be coming his way. And now he knows exactly where it is. Goodbye, Rifleman Squad, and Pitbulls should be coming out, although he can go for Predator Tanks quite simply. That's 100% okay to do. And Green Zero, check this out. He's going to be losing his spike. This is what I like to see from, of course, Technique. Oh, he's taken out both of the spikes. So actually, he could very well pull this Flame Tank back. This is something that we've seen him do before, is kill the spike, then pull back. You forced your opponent to go into kind of defensive mode. Look at this. He dropped down that barracks to get out the extra DPS, although this will be working to deal with these... Oh my gosh, these bikes are actually going to be getting this kill. They're going to be heading around to the south side of this War Factor. Can they actually get the last few rockets off? Yes, they do get it. That Harvester was full of Tiberium. They get a bit more damage on this other Harvester, but that is not what matters. That Harvester is indeed what matters. Great play there by Technique, forcing the sell-off of another power plant. Now, of course, on one base, you can exist on this map for quite a while. This is a map where you can actually go 3 Refinery, 7 Harvester for this game. And you can do that for quite a little while. Now, Technique has, of course, secured himself with those 2 Tib spikes. He's now up to 2 and 4, which is probably the same ratio that Green Zero is out. That's right, 2 and 4, because Technique was able to kill that Harvester. Now, of course, killing a Harvester that is full of Tiberium is worth about 1,400 credits more than a Harvester that is empty. So if you add those two things together, that's 3 grand of, I mean, that you've got the 1,600 to rebuild the harvester, and then the 1,400 that you're missing out on. That's a lot of money for Green Zero to be down right now in this game. And of course, how much did Technique actually spend on bikes? Somewhere in between 2 and 3 grand, but that he ended up losing because he lost like 5 bikes, and I don't really remember how much bikes are. Actually, if they're 700, then Technique spent more on that attack, but taking out that economy is so important and slowing it down. Now, Technique might very well be going for a refinery on his expansion. I'm not exactly sure what he's building. It is going to be a refinery, and are we going to be seeing more and more harvesters pop out for Technique? Because this could be a harvester to transfer down to the southern field. It most likely will. And Green Zero, oh, losing a rifleman squad there. I thought for a second it was an engineer, but a rifleman squad, not too big of a deal because it's just that scouting unit. But there is going to be the command post. There's going to be AP ammo, which means this could be hammerheads. I mean, he could be going orcas, but versus Black Hand, hammerheads make a lot more sense. Of course, Black Hand, they have so many good units to just take down orcas because they're infantry, of course. Rocket squads are good in pretty much all stages of the game, but against orcas, they're particularly good. And then, of course, if you get the Black Hand upgrade, well then, or the Black Disciple upgrade, well then suddenly it's like your rocket squads are good versus air, they're good versus basically everything. If you play Kane's Wrath, you already know that. That's kind of just the tip for the newbies. Triple War Factory Bike Buggy. That's what won Technique of the game in that last match. That was a bit more of an open map, and this map kind of forces you into the 3 main attack paths that kind of are chokes. They're not like super choky, and really, I mean, like this whole area is open. Of course, it's kind of infested with the buildings, and then this area is pretty open, but ultimately this map comes down to those chokes. Green Zero starting to focus down those tip spikes, but this is several minutes into this game past the point where Technique ended up killing off the tip spikes for Green Zero. And actually, oh no, if Green Zero, okay, he is paying attention. This is very good. This is potentially very bad for Green Zero because you can get into the mode where you right-click on that building and then you forget about those units, and then the next time you look over, it's like, you know, units are attacking you, and then you hit the space bar, you look over there, and you're like, oh, there's like 40 bikes right under my hammerheads. How do I even get out of here? A couple of Scorpion tanks are going to be spotting the expansion for Technique. Green Zero going to be powering down that refinery just as it lands, just to keep that harvester from spawning so it doesn't actually take any damage. Bike Buggy will be able to deal with these hammerheads, but only if they get under them. And of course, they cannot get under those hammerheads with the APC Predator tank combination that Green Zero currently has guarding the hammerheads. Green Zero could also go for this tower, since that will allow him to do a fair amount of damage to the Bike Buggy of Technique. But Technique, this is kind of the problem, is getting around the map is kind of difficult because of how congested it becomes. As you can see, his units are just scrambling to get past each other. Just trying to get around this map for those units is so difficult. So that's why in some cases, the slower moving, bigger armies, which are a bit more powerful, can end up working out a little bit better. But this is so many Scorpion tanks and, well, really so many bikes mixed in with a few Scorpion tanks that these Predator tanks are getting absolutely #wrecked. And you can, of course, depend on Technique to go Bike Buggy at some point in a game if he's playing Black Hand, which, of course, Technique is a Black Hand player. And these hammerheads, oh my gosh, this is like the perfect position for them. They're just, oh, right on the edge there, never mind. As they start taking damage from those SAM turrets, may actually end up losing one, does drop down one of those hammerheads. But Technique has been able to clean up the forces of Green Zero, and he is actually going to be able to potentially clean up a couple more of these harvesters. One of those harvesters is very low, and of course, these are just auto-mining harvesters. They're not actually necessarily being told to go up there, but it is going to be spelling their defeat, their demise, and their destruction, as Green Zero loses 2 more harvesters to the bikes, not so much Bike Buggy, oh my gosh, to the bikes of Technique. And man, that one bike was just too powerful. Now, one thing that I would like to see from Technique is him going for that tier 3 and getting those late game upgrades. Of course, since he's Black Hand and not Nod, his laser capacitor buggies don't actually exist, but he of course can get Tib Core, which will allow him to deal with everything quite a bit easier. Of course, Juggernauts are going to be a good choice for Green Zero. Again, if we end up seeing some crazy stacking, which we sometimes do see on this map, these Juggernauts could be super nice. Also, Rocket Squad's going to be taking a fair amount of damage there. He's trying to just jump them in and out of buildings to delay the attack command for as long as possible, but the Flame Tank is a little bit too close here, and it's just going to be able to eat up those forces anyways. there's going to be the tech lab, and he is most likely going to be going for that TIB core missile upgrade. Of course, that will allow his bikes to be so more effective, but Venoms are going to be not in this game. Unfortunately, Scorpion tanks, on the other hand, are in this game, and they are going to be targeting down those Juggernauts really quite easily. The terrain and the geometry on this map is kind of weird, which allows Juggernauts to fire through the mountain. I don't know if that's maybe because the artillery for the other factions can shoot over mountain. I mean, Spectres can shoot over the mountains. As you can see, it wouldn't necessarily be fair for the Juggernauts because they can't, you know, go through the mountain. But at any rate, I don't know why Juggernauts can fire through this mountain. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but they can. And we could also be seeing EMP coils come out from this tech lab. I'm not 100% sure what it's going to be. The stealth or the scan does reveal the Spectres, and with this Marv here, Technique is in a lot of trouble. The focus fire is going to be happening potentially on these Harvesters, which would be absolutely fantastic by Green Zero, eliminating this economy and forcing Technique to most likely head up to this northern field, which will, of course, will give Green Zero pretty free reign. It is going to be TIB core missiles. He probably won't have time to get out the EMP coils, but that would be absolutely fantastic for him to do at this point. The Juggernauts are taking a lot of damage from the Spectres, and they may actually be getting cleaned up. One of them does get cleaned up. The second one is so close to going down, and Technique just is trying to dart in and out with this huge amount of bikes. He may just need to go for the counterattack. This would be a great place to counterattack. Could maybe even clean up the airfield as well. And this Marv is not going to be able to respond through all of this Sim City, really. It's just an absolute mess for Green Zero to try to get his Marv back through. So I think going for a counterattack would be fantastic by Technique, but for now, he needs to buy himself as much time as possible. He's going for just bike right now. Pretty much no buggies, pretty much no Redeemer, although he does have the Redeemer engineering facility. And I'm not sure what was taking damage. It looked like just a bike or something from a little bit of rifleman squads, but Green Zero now has a veteran Marv on the verge of potentially going elite. I'm not actually sure when it got veteran, so it might not go elite for a little while, but laser fencing, really, this is just to delay Green Zero a little bit longer. I'm not necessarily thinking, actually, Technique might be dropping down his tech center right about now. Yeah, he gets it out. So the laser fencing was not only to delay that Marv and just make that operation center last a little bit longer, but it was also so he could get up that tier 3 and most likely start on EMP coils, because if he's going for charged particle beams, I would be a little bit surprised. There's another Juggernaut firing off, and the ion cannon from Green Zero. This is kind of the note from Green Zero saying, hey, if you want to play the camping game, I can play the camping game. If you want to do that, I'm the one with the super weapon, and of course, it's going to be counting down. Now, the ion cannon. Oh, Harvester, what are you doing? Harvester's not super important right at this moment, but assuming the Technique ever wants to take that northern field, this is what he has to do. The EMPs are pretty much a perfect blanket for Technique, but can he keep this Marv locked down? Swinging around to the south, to the right side of this Marv is going to be fantastic. Locking down this Marv repeatedly is exactly what he needs to do, and goodbye, Marv. Hello, heroic bikes, as there is now at least one heroic bike in this mixture, and the entire late-game, high-tech, expensive army from Green Zero just got #wrecked. And that was the perfect engagement for Technique. That was the exact engagement that he needed. Look at that, Green Zero trying to eliminate the husks. He only gets one, and these other two husks for Green Zero. He's going to try to kill them as quickly as he can. Those Harvesters need to be brought back on the line. Goodbye, two of those Hammerheads. The third one could be going down in this watchtower. Almost gets eliminated. Will end up walking away, though. It will end up surviving. Oh! Hello, MCV. This thing needs to deploy pretty much immediately. If Technique doesn't get it deployed before this next volley of rockets, he would end up losing it. Now, Green Zero does have the ion cannon. Now, why is that important? Not because he's going to be able to wait in this game for 5 minutes and not do anything, but more because he can sell this off at pretty much any point to get a nice cash boost. Now, it could be that Green Zero is able to stick in this game long enough to let that ion cannon count down, but it also means that at any point in this game he needs a cash boost, he can sell that off really quite easily. Now, as you already saw, we did see indeed the Reclamator Hub, the Marv Reclamator Facility, whatever it's called, did get sold off, and of course Green Zero now has an Engineer Railgun Marv. Not, of course, the tankiest Marv in the game, and not the most powerful Marv, but it's a nice sort of middle ground. Of course, it's better than just the naked Marv, but at the same time, it does have a little bit of extra DPS, and of course, a little bit of extra cost associated with it, so that means that, I mean, well, at least one of the Zone Trooper squads was produced, the other one was from the sell-off, but still, that's like an extra $2,500 mixed into that Marv, or like $2,200 mixed into that Marv. So if it goes down, it's going to be very, very expensive. Not actually sure what shelled this base. I guess it was just the Rifleman squads from Green Zero there, as he is going to have to be careful about dealing with Black Hand with those rocket squads. Did I say Rifleman squads? I think I did, which is just not the right thing. So, technique. Can he do it a second time? He kind of pulled off a miracle engagement where he got the exact perfect engagement that he needed, but can he do it a second time? Maybe, maybe not. There's rocket squads mixed in, and of course watchtowers here to support, which means it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And also Green Zero is being a little bit smarter about where he engages. He's being a lot safer. He's keeping his Marv far more secured. And again, counterattacks for oh, actually, with this train of harvesters, counterattacks would be absolutely perfect. Technique, if he sent just a Cabal squad through here, he would realize how incredibly vulnerable this base is, and Green Zero really does not need to be counting on the fact that he's got no units over here, and that he's counting on the fact that Technique is not counterattacking right now, which is very bad for Green Zero. But Green Zero, he's playing this out quite well. Technique is now forced into a corner, and Green Zero kind of controls about 3/4 of the map. He just pretty much has this last slice of the pie up here that Technique is defending. Technique, he doesn't want to move his army out to lose his base, but well, he had the opportunity a number of times in this game, and it's still going to take the Marv a little bit of time to get up here. But the longer he waits, the less and less likely, because now Green Zero doesn't have anything to distract him down here. His hammerheads can fly freely. Pretty much everything that Green Zero wants to do, he can do. And the only real hope that Technique has is that he's going to get another perfect engagement. He's going to be able to swing in here, eliminate the hammerheads for pretty much no cost. He cannot afford to lose very many of these bikes. This is pretty much the only DPS he has in his army, and if he ends up losing that, that is going to be, of course, bad news bears. That's going to be a bad situation for Technique to be in. One bike does go down, trades it for 2 hammerheads and some pretty heavy damage on a 3rd hammerhead. That's a good exchange for Technique, but those bikes were not free, and Green Zero is the one that still has production facilities, although granted, he doesn't have a lot of them. And Technique, he now knows that this base is very exposed, but Green Zero, he's had the time to place down a barracks, he's had the time to rebuild, and also, I mean, this is like 3 minutes after kind of when I talked about the counterattacks happening. Another 3 minutes have gone by where Green Zero has been allowed to do exactly what he wants. At the same time, Technique is trying to rebuild as much as he can, and unfortunately, this kind of giant crane thing does interfere with the building of, with the buildings there. Ooh. That engineer does get sniped down for Green Zero. He will not be grabbing that defensive tower, unfortunately for him. And that's the 1 minute marker for Green Zero's ion cannon. We may end up seeing it fire off, and if it does fire off, if Technique loses a lot of his army to that ion cannon, it is most likely going to be lights out. Now, Green Zero, he's in such a very strong position, it's going to be difficult for him to lose. That's almost a full load of Tiberium between those harvesters, more like a half load of Tiberium. But if Green Zero just sits in this game, he doesn't have to do a whole lot. He just has to not die. And just focusing on not dying is pretty darn important. And again, Green Zero did have a huge opening here, but he has sealed it up a little bit there with some rifleman squads, with some rocket squads. And those juggernauts, oh, the splash damage on these tanks. A couple of the tanks were taking some splash. It's not a huge amount of splash, but it is a little bit. And oh, the Marv does escape pretty much every single shot from those juggernauts, or from the juggernaut singular. But we're starting to see more EMP coil buggies, and Technique still has a chance in this game. There's the ion cannon firing off. Goodbye, Eco. Now, that did take out a refinery and some other stuff, but all of the harvesters did pretty much get pulled away. There's 4 harvesters, 3 of them or so are full of Tiberium, and the tech does get established there for Technique. Another couple of Predator tanks, another harvester does go down for Green Zero, and Green Zero, if he just sort of lets Technique whittle away at him, that could absolutely be spelling disaster for Green Zero. Now, Green Zero, if Technique ends up running in here with a big swarm of bike buggy, Technique can, or Green Zero can hit from the side with a lot of these, with a lot of those Predator tanks, and this is going to be the move here. Can Technique get the absolute perfect engagement? The Juggernaut from the high ground is doing quite a bit of damage, but we'll have to see if this bike-buggy combo is enough to take down the Marv. The Marv is the super tank unit of this army, and it's not super necessarily important, but it is going to be a huge victory if Technique is able to kill it. Now, of course, Green Zero does still have... Oh my gosh, it goes down! Is that a heroic Juggernaut that we have? No, it's just a veteran Juggernaut. Oh my gosh, these Predator tanks are now severely weakened, and if any of these rocket squads come out of that hand of Nod, they will be some extra nice DPS for Technique to have. Now, also, these Predator tanks need to stay alive. They need to keep moving. They need to avoid those Juggernaut shots, but Green Zero also knows that if he loses these Predator tanks, he doesn't have a whole lot left. This is going to be an excellent source of income for Green Zero, but it's going to be long-distance harvesting pretty much any way he looks at it. He's going to try to shut down the economy of Technique, and I'm not actually sure where Technique's harvesters are. If they all got taken out, then that's, of course, a kind of death spiral for both of these players where they're so close to getting taken out. Now, Green Zero does have the hardier army, but Technique does still have the sheer numbers of units. Oh my gosh, who's actually... A bit of a lag spike there. There's 3 harvesters pulled off the line here, and the Juggernaut, if it gets some nice shots off here, could really be ending the game. There's the pause for those Predator tanks. The Juggernaut does not fire off. He's cleaning up a couple of more Predator tanks over there. That's fantastic for Technique. Green Zero, again, he needs to make sure that his units pretty much never stop moving. There's 2 more Predator tanks that go down. A third does get eliminated. And Green Zero, he's close to elimination, but so is Technique. This game is so close between these 2 players. That Marv going down, those repeat EMPs. So, oh my gosh, the hero tower. And also this EMP, I don't know how close it is to counting down, but it's gotta be close at this point, which means that's not a free EMP, because you do have to kind of project where your opponent is going to be, but it's very easy to land. It's got a pretty nice radius, and I mean, of course, you don't have to hit direct center to really get it to be effective. It's kind of OP, but of course you do have to spend 500 credits to be able to use it, and it's got quite a long cooldown. Alright, so the Operations Center was rebuilt and then sold off. The split on these refineries is absolutely fantastic for Technique. I don't know how much of it was intentional, but it did end up saving him in this game because, of course, Green Zero had to make a single choice as to where to use that ion cannon, and he ended up using it on one of the refineries, missed a lot of the harvesters, and this harvester for Green Zero goes down. Let's do a quick harvester count. There's 2 there for Green Zero, a third. He's doing okay. He's doing okay. 3 and 2 is an all-right ratio, plus he's got 2 Tiberium spikes. No, he's only got 1 Tiberium spike, but there's pretty much only 1 Tiberium spike left on this map. Everything else has been eliminated, and this base split from these players is so weird. Technique, oh man, his bike buggy, if he gets if he gets these perfect engagements, which he pretty much has been getting, he is going to be in an all-right position. He can sneak in here, he can take out this harvester. If he gets, again, just kiting around these units is going to be very important. Using the buggies to kill off the rifleman squads, which don't really pose too much of a threat. Killing 2 of the 3 harvesters that Green Zero has is very important. This Juggernaut is pretty much the MVP of this game, and I don't know how Technique would have done it without this Juggernaut. Oh, he may actually be losing the Juggernaut. No, Green Zero doesn't actually keep attacking it there. He has to be so careful with these bikes here. He may actually end up just... Oh! Alright then, man, if he would have landed that EMP on top of those hammerheads, it, of course, would have been lights out. Green Zero, I think, is just going to have to tap out here. He may just be selling pretty much everything off. He's got a full load of Tiberium coming in, but this refinery is not going to be lasting too long. He could actually garrison that Black Hand Squad, and I think they would still have range. But I think this is going to have to be it from Green Zero. He's lost too much over too long. I think Technique, the resilient master, may very well be able to clean this all up. Wow, this game has been so close for so long. The bikes coming in. This is the counterattack. Believe the hype. Technique is real. The counterattack is real. And goodbye refinery, goodbye power plant, goodbye watchtower. The hammerheads are not in good enough numbers to deal with this many bikes, this many TIB core bikes. Keep in mind, there's one harvester left. He's going to suicide in. He doesn't actually suicide because he's got too many bikes, and there's not enough watchtowers here to deal with this many bikes. He's going for the TIB spike. TIB core is so good. The TIB core is real. This is getting so dicey for Green Zero as he's hanging in here. I don't know if he realizes just how dead he is. Of course, Technique, he's close to death, but the longer this game goes on, Technique is just getting further and further ahead. This power plant does somehow survive, but a couple more bikes, or a couple more rockets from those bikes, slam into it and finish it off. The knife from Technique, it's just cutting further and further into everything that Green Zero has. There's basically no infrastructure. Green Zero must think that Technique doesn't have like a production facility or an MCV. I think Green Zero thinks that Technique just sold a bunch of stuff off, or maybe that he can have the hero come back. I mean, this would be the biggest throw of a game if Technique lost from this point. The GG will be coming out momentarily here, but there we go. There's the EMP on top of that refinery, the mass sell-off. Green Zero has been defeated. He drops out of the tournament. Oh, man. Oh, man. What was that game? I don't even know. I need some more water after that game. 25 minutes. Not quite pure, unadulterated action, but some fantastic play there. The bike buggy, too good. And Technique with superior eco, but not really superior by a lot. I mean, 5,000 credits spread pretty much evenly over the course of a 25-minute game is basically nothing.